Hello, strangers. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, welcome. Sit back and enjoy another true, scary story. This one being story 113. Like most of the best stories you'll hear, this one comes from a confluence of events, seemingly random, but there you go. 1. As a young girl, my mom had enrolled me in gymnastics. The Olympic dream shrank as I grew past 5'8", but it gave me a certain dexterity that I parlayed into being one of the best keg standers at parties. 2. In the military, I frequented a tattoo parlor. I had occasion to make some interesting friends on more of the fringes of the community. 3. About the military. I was in my 20s and between jobs, separating out and not sure what I was going to do next. While not in danger of losing my apartment, there was that nagging thought in the back of my head that I needed to be bringing some money in, even a little, before I picked up my next job. 4th, when you get out of the military, they call it separating and make you take these classes. The idea of the classes is that they're trying to prepare you for civilian life. Really, though, it's where they try their best to alarm you of the surety of the dire straits you'll encounter on the other side. And wouldn't you like to just extend or re-enlist instead? It was in these classes that I met another girl named Shannon, and Shannon wasn't taking any of their guff. We ended up grabbing lunch together, and I brought up how I appreciated how quickly she could shut down the fear-mongering in our last class. She laughed and told me she'd been moonlighting for near a year and made twice the money doing so. They couldn't make her scared of not having money at all. I was, of course, intrigued, and she enthusiastic to tell me that her gig was in the entertainment industry. My newfound friend moonlighted as a party clown, sometimes a magician, but with the new It movie coming out, clown parties were on the rise. Kids, man, they're weird as hell, but who doesn't love a good scare every now and then? We went back and forth for a while before she stunned me by asking me to come along on her next gig. She said my background in gymnastics and the likelihood of me being available as I applied for more stable work were solid green flags, as well as the fact that I didn't hear the word clown and run away, claiming to be chorophobic. For my take, well, it was money. Also, there'd be cake. So I went. At first, I borrowed one of her outfits before I cobbled one together myself. I painted my face up, and I was a good sport. I chose to be a silent clown for the most part. I played the straight man mime to her knock-knock jokes. And the kids loved it. They loved knocking things out of our hands when we juggled. They loved leaping away when we'd pounce forward with a flower that shot water. After years of checklists and standard forms, it was wonderful to be outside, surrounded by color and the sound of delighted if shrieky kids. I was hooked, and Shannon insisted I join her for the next gig, and the next. I learned quickly that summer months were the busiest. I guess that's when the most birthdays are, as well as the most free time kids have for parties. With our newly freed up schedules, we were available on random Tuesdays and the like, and did as many as 10 parties in 1 week. If I never see another funfetti cake, it'll be too soon, but I'd be lying if I didn't sit back in my apartment and think, maybe this is why kids always threaten to run away and join the circus. But as the summer burned out and fall replaced it, and gigs became slimmer and slimmer, I had to put my mind back on finding a new job, one that had less piñatas, but likely made up for it in a steady paycheck. It was right around Halloween when that second random fact, my friendship with the clientele at the local tattoo parlor, intersected into my carefree clowning life, like the Bermuda Triangle. One of the artists at the shop let me know there was going to be an event downtown, for which she and some of the others in the friend group were putting together acts and such. Being aware of my newest occupation, she was sure I'd be a hit. I asked what it was, some kind of expo or birthday convention, but she played it a little coy. All she'd say was that it was more adult. I floated it past Shannon, thinking she'd appreciate the ability to make some money in what were traditionally the leaner months. I was surprised when initially she shot it down, hard. She'd been approached by some others also involved with the event, and had more detail than I did. It wasn't just a party for adults. It was an adult party. Think of some of the acts you see at an 18 and up tattoo convention. Suspensions, alternate lifestyle stuff, and some fetish stuff. The performers weren't just clowning around, and our usual act of cartwheels and hula hoops were likely to be performed in a much different context. I was stuck. On the one hand, I appreciated Shannon's concern. I really wasn't into that scene, and the thought of being around it for hours didn't sound like the kind of thing I could tell my mom about. On the other hand, though, I was getting to the point where I was going to be dipping into my savings or playing a Sophie's Choice game between gas to drive my car and fuel to drive my body. Plus, after Shannon had seemingly thrown me, a fellow separated soldier, a lifeline into this new fun career, I just really wanted to bring her paying work in return. And the gig, my friend from the tattoo parlor assured me, paid really well. As much as we'd make at 3 birthday parties. Plus, my friends at the parlor. I was worried my refusal of their party would be like refusing them or saying I was better than them. So I leaned into Shannon, really sold her on it. I bolstered my argument with the promises that my other friends had made. Yes, it was an adult venue, but very professional. We'd be on a stage with room between us and any attendees, and there was zero expectation of us to do anything beyond be a contrast, a wholesome, PG-rated, well, PG-13 rated, clown act. We were to be ironic. It was good money. And hey, you never know. We could maybe network a bit with the other performers and find more events, cons and such, to tide us over until the summer rush. Shannon finally agreed on 2 stipulations. 1, completely different personas. We would change the costumes, the face paint, even the names. We would keep our child-friendly side completely separate from this other, seedier side. The second, if something went wrong, we'd leave. No argument. I was eager to agree to both, assuring her that while the second rule was a given, my other friends had told me that wouldn't be necessary. We'd arrived at the event at 5 p.m., anticipating working until 2 a.m., when alcohol could no longer be served. The place was stuffed full of acts. We weren't the only ironic act there. There was another children's entertainer, a magician we knew there, but unlike us, while we'd changed our whole look, our costumes were still neck-to-knee coverage and exposed nothing. He'd adulted up his act a little. The sword-swallowing his lovely assistant was doing was, memorable. I started to get this funny little cramp in my side. The idea of this party had seemed bulletproof, but standing there with everything and seeing the scope of what we were, in fact, getting into, I don't know that anything could have prepared me for it. But we'd signed on, and as we took up position at our little stage, which wasn't much more than just a very small collection of pallets over which a tarp had been spread, black and white striped, I just reminded myself that, with my new face and all my tattoos covered, and my hair tucked under a blue bob wig, at least no one would be able to recognize me. And then the doors opened, and the night began in earnest. We juggled. We told lewd jokes and limericks. We did slapstick. The flower that sprayed a mist of water was a real hit. But as I looked around and heard some comments, it all started to feel sour. Like we were doing our act. It was a good act, one that had entertained kids at a million parties. But somehow, doing it here made even the innocent, unchanged elements from our act seem tainted. We were definitely one of the tamer acts, but that didn't make me feel any better about it. The least tame thing we did was the, balloon art. You can probably imagine what all we were creating from context alone. At one point, we had a small group of men gathered around us, watching Shannon and I juggle some, marital aids between us. I was keeping up the jokes, and the guys were laughing. One of the guys, though, wasn't really laughing with them. His eyes cut from the things we were juggling to us. They moved up and down, really obvious. It felt off. He was sort of off to the side of the group of guys, so I focused on the main clump of them. They asked us for balloon animals, so Shannon and I put aside our juggling and started working on the balloons. Shannon asked for requests, and the guy from before, the one off to the side who'd been staring us down, shouted out, "Make a giant rooster." Except, of course, it wasn't the word rooster. At the man's loud voice carrying over the rest of the group and the rest of the din of the crowd, the other guys he'd sidled up to, startled, and looked at him. They were clearly surprised to see anyone there, and no one looked like they knew him. In that moment, as Shannon finished what is, at least, a very simple balloon, I remember thinking, he's not with them. He's just trying to act like he is. And for whatever reason, that gave me a very bad feeling. The next 20 or so seconds are something I've replayed 1,000 times. In those few moments, 3 things happened in rapid succession. 1. Something loud banged or dropped off onto the other side of the warehouse, behind the group of guys clustered before us. They all turned to see where or what it was. All except the guy off to the side. 2. Shannon reached out with the finished balloon, handing it to the guy still staring her down, who took a step forward right up onto our little platform stage. He didn't take it out of her hands so much as use one of his hands to clasp hers around the balloon. The other hand, like a snake striking it, was so fast, he shot out and grabbed the back of her head. Shannon's mouth was open from saying, "Here you go," so when he pulled her head down towards the balloon, pandemonium. I was screeching. I dropped my balloon and my balloon pump. Shannon was coughing from shock and being unable to breathe with that thing blocking her mouth. The guys were turning back around, though, and my cries for help, cries for the guy to stop, what was he doing, were eaten up by their cries. Their cries were much louder, much angrier. They shoved in between the guy and Shannon, ripping his hands away from her and pushing him back, getting in his face. He wouldn't look at them, though. His eyes were glued to Shannon, and then me. I would have expected to see anger there, fury at being stopped from assaulting my friend, but Across his face, all I saw was contentment. Smug. He was pleased with what he'd done, even as he was borne backwards, torn away from us and off outside where I presume he was thrown out. I didn't watch, though. Next to me, Shannon was gagging, spitting up. The thing had made her throw up a little. Forget the equipment. I grabbed my friend and we hightailed it out of there. I was crying, apologizing to Shannon. The whole naughty adult party had been from my friends. Shannon had only gone along with it, only been there because of me. I felt terrible. But she kept telling me it wasn't my fault. It was a slim time in bookings. We both needed food and rent money. And there was no way I could have known what would have happened. But we resolved then and there that our moonlighting as adult entertainers was completely at an end. And for me, entertaining in general was winding up. One of my applications finally found purchase, and I had a start date lined up for a boring office job to see me through the winter. I promised Shannon I'd still support the odd weekend booking if she needed me. For about a month, I still did. At least, until the last party. The last party I helped out at was a birthday party. 10-year-old girl, very into rainbows and little princess stuff. We were co-entertaining with a magician. Not the same one from the party. And it made the whole thing feel like a circus. The kids were having a blast. Their screech laughter was shrill over the piped-in music. Shannon and I were cartwheeling, running sack races, and doing face paint. A lot of the little girls wanted clown makeup, but pretty, so we went really hard with the glitter. All was good up until everyone gathered for cake. That was when a lot of the parents came over from where they'd been staying, off on the other side of the yard, enjoying just chatting with the other adults, I guess. So we all huddle up, and birthday girl is front and center to blow out the candles. One of the moms has this crazy-looking camera out, and she asks to pose us, the girl, her parents, and the entertainers, around the cake before it's dismantled. So we all collect around the side of the table, in sort of a Last Supper pose. Magician's assistant, magician, kid's mom, kid and cake, kid's dad, Shannon, then me. We took 2 pictures, and then dispersed. I was sort of hanging around for the cake, but to my surprise Shannon jerked me away by my arm, pulling me back towards our trunk of props and away from the throng. I looked at her, ready to ask why, but stopped. Even under the grease paint makeup, her face looked gray-white, like she was going to pass out. I asked her, What's wrong?" Numbly, and through teeth she wouldn't part, she told me, "It's him." Him? A balloon popped, and she near jumped out of her skin. At that, the memory of it all clicked. I whipped my head back to the kid's dad, really taking in his face for the first time. Shannon was right. It was him. The balloon guy. And as he stared down at his daughter, beaming at her in her clown makeup, he had the same smug look of contentment. I haven't clowned since. I'm not one for tradition. I read somewhere on Tumblr that tradition is just pure pressure from dead people, and I think that's true. But in some cases, seeing something traditionally reserved for the innocent, the young, and the pure, and seeing something dark take an interest in it. Give me a stranger danger hook hand car door any day. If you liked the video, if you have something to say, or if you want to see more, Please make full use of the like, comment, and subscribe features available to all users of YouTube. And until next time, stay strange but stay safe, and take care, strangers.